I'm a member of the board of directors for Beretta USA Corporation, which is located in Accokeek, Maryland. I'm also the corporate secretary for Benelli USA, and I'm the president of Stoger Industries, both of which are located both in Accokeek and in Pocomoke City. I have a longer version of this presentation that I've submitted as written testimony. I'd ask if with the indulgence of the chairman, if that could be accepted, and I would encourage you all to read that because it includes additional discussion about constitutional issues that are raised by the SB 281. The three companies from the Beretta Group that I represent are part of Beretta's global group of companies. Each of these three companies imports and sells firearms, and in the case of Beretta USA, we actually manufacture the standard sidearm for the U.S. Armed Forces in Accokeek, Maryland. We're very proud to do that. From 1997 to 2014, these companies have either paid or projected to pay $31 million in taxes within the state of Maryland. These companies employ about 400 people at any given time. Almost every family in southern Maryland has benefited from the income or insurance benefits that have been provided by to the thousands of people who've worked at the various Beretta companies over the decades. And at one time, Beretta USA was the second largest private employer in southern Maryland. In addition, the Beretta Group has invested or plans to invest an estimated $73 million during that same time frame of 94 to 2014, mostly in southern Maryland and mostly in equipment, buildings, and infrastructure. Now, surprisingly, we learned that the governor and this legislature are considering a ban on certain semi-automatic rifles and on magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. These are both products that we make. In Italy, Beretta has existed continuously in the same small town for almost 500 years. The company is in its 15th generation of continuous family ownership, and it's the oldest industrial dynasty in the world. That shows the commitment Beretta has to the community where it lies, and that commitment goes to the Beretta family members, three of which are still now running the company. That commitment's not one-sided, though. In Maryland, which is our home, we're now confronted with the state government that wants to ban the products that we make. This is happening, by the way, at a time when we are being courted by numerous other states to put our investment in those states or even to move our facilities. We don't want to do this. We're not willing to do this, but obviously this legislation has caused a serious level of concern within our company. And Mr. Beretta was in the United States last week, and we had extensive discussions about this very issue. We understand why SB 281 was written, and we understand the motivations behind it. The problem with the bill as written is that it's misguided, and some of the concepts behind it are misguided as well. What SB 281 does is treat as dangerous millions of people who lawfully and safely own semi-automatic rifles and the tens of millions of people who lawfully and safely own magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. It tells you that these people can protect their family, they can protect their homes, they can protect their business and exercise their Second Amendment rights as long as they can get that all done within 10 rounds or less. It also tells people that in Maryland, unlike certain other states, there are significant limits on your exercise of Second Amendment rights. Ironically, SB 281 does all this by trying to ban rifles that are not typically used in crime. In 2012, for example, out of 1,400 criminal assaults that occurred in New York City with firearms, Police Commissioner Kelly said that only 3 involved semi-automatic rifles of this style or type that would be banned under SB 281. Nationally, the homicide rate has dropped 50% in the last 20 years, and that's been during a time when more people are buying firearms, and the sale of the types of rifles that would be banned under SB 281 are now numbering in the millions. SB 281 also adds harassment to its effort to ban certain products. Has there ever really been confusion in Maryland about the identity of somebody who's going to buy a firearm at a firearm dealer? When you buy a firearm at a firearm dealer, you have to present identification, and then the FBI runs an instant background check, which is the clearance point before the person can buy the firearm. Why then also require that the person go through a fingerprinting process at a cost of a certain cost and then renew that every 5 years just so they can buy a sidearm for hunting or for target shooting or for self-defense? In light of the horrific tragedy that occurred in Newtown, Connecticut, and that's occurred in too many cities around the country, the desire to do something to stop this is understandable. What Beretta USA has done is, as part of the National Shooting Sports Foundation, invested millions of dollars in buying millions of handgun locks and safety information for families around the country.
Mr. Ray, your time has expired, but I think there are a number of members who have questions. So
certainly,
we'll
thank
start
you.
with Senator Getty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ray, I've sort of looked at Senate Bill 281 in a couple of different angles, and because it would prohibit the transport of certain firearms, it basically would require you to close your business in Prince George's County, wouldn't it? For those regulated firearms.
I'm also the general counsel for all the Beretta companies in the state of Maryland, and to be frank with you, I've been reading the bill to try to figure out. That's been my number one concern. If that becomes the interpretation of the statute, we would have to move the companies. I think that there's some room for discussion on that, but that is a concern of my company.
Well, the language here is transport, possess, sell, offer to sell, transfer, receiving a weapon, and that's what your company does. I mean, they manufacture.
Right.
I guess there could be an exemption for manufacturing, but basically you are selling and transporting and transferring firearms, and your company would be banned from the state under this legislation.
We are, and in fact, in Maryland, there's a requirement that if you manufacture or deal in firearms, you also have to be licensed as a Maryland dealer, and the provisions that you're talking about there also apply to that.
Thank you.
Mr. Ray, let me ask you a couple questions.
Please.
I don't think you raised, and I take it you don't have a concern with the licensing provisions of this bill, right?
The licensing provisions are a bit outside of our focus as a manufacturer, but actually we do have concern about the licensing provisions. In Canada, where they required mandatory licensing of all gun owners, it costs the Canadian government billions of dollars, and I realize it's at a scale that we're not talking about here. Although the population of Canada is about 35 million people, and probably the number of gun owners is roughly comparable, it took years for the Canadian government to try to implement that. It had absolutely no effect on crime, and it was recently abandoned by the Canadian government.
Do you explain to us, apart from law enforcement, who needs an assault weapon as is defined in the bill here?
Well, apparently I do, because I own several.
Okay, and for what?
I'm sorry?
For what?
I collect firearms. I use them for target shooting. We have a number of the customers who purchase these firearms are returning veterans who like to target shoot or have the same type of firearm, or for self-defense.
Okay, well, let's come back to self-defense.
Yeah.
Target shooting, other than target shooting, the only other reason would be for self-defense?
No, those guns are also used for hunting. And in fact, the more current term for that type of rifle is a modern sporting rifle. You can, in a .308 caliber, you can use it for deer hunting. In lower calibers, you can use it for all sorts of varmint hunting and other types of hunting.
You need a 20-round magazine, a rifle that accommodates 20-round semi-automatic for deer hunting?
No, you would need that for self-defense or to protect your home or business.
And if most crimes are not, I think what you said earlier was that it's only very infrequently that somebody commits a crime with an assault weapon. Why do you need one for self-defense?
Well, for the very same reason that police buy them for protection of the community. If I'm a owner of a bodega and I have multiple assailants coming into my shop, even just presenting a rifle like that could be a significant deterrent.
Wouldn't you say presenting any rifle would be a deterrent?
Well, if it's a single shot, maybe not as much as an AR-15.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.